The latest controversy to hit the NFL, Adrian Peterson is in hot water right now for a supposed child abuse scandal, for punishing his child with a
A branch.
what's it called, Tommy?
A switch or a branch? I don't know what a switch
A
is
switch
really.
or a branch, and
Yeah.
some other things like stuffing leaves in his kid's mouth, and stuff like that. The Vikings suspended him last week while they're figuring out the details of the investigation, but now they've reinstated him to much uproar from people in Minnesota, sponsors, supposedly the governor, Tommy. Do you think Adrian Peterson should be playing this weekend?
No, I don't. I think he should be sitting. I think at some point, while I'm not sure if he's guilty or whatever the legal system is, at some point you have to say, look, we can't have a guy who stuffs leaves down a 4-year-old's throat on our football team. We just can't. I mean, I don't care how good he is. I mean, you can't have you just can't have someone who does it running around. I mean, if you did that, what would your boss say? You know, would your boss keep you around if you were stuffing leaves down 4-year-olds' throats? I don't think so. So I don't. I can't think of any situation where it's okay for him to play. I really can't.
So I get everything you're saying. Couple issues I have are I think everyone is really sensitive right now to pretty much anything an NFL player does wrong. And in other scenarios, I don't think this whole Adrian Peterson thing would be nearly getting as much heat as it's actually getting. I think it's important to think about the fact that this is the way he was raised, and he feels like he turned out to be a pretty successful person, and that his parenting had something to do with that. And I'm not justifying his actions at all, because from the pictures and the things that have come out of the police report, it's clear that he took it too far with his kid. But I also think that we're starting to see some pretty over-the-top reactions from some people who I don't think really care about this situation at all. For instance, Tommy, the Radisson just dropped their sponsorship of the Vikings, which I think is a huge deal because it's the first time we're really seeing any type of corporate sponsorship be dropped in the NFL. We saw it with the Clippers, with Donald Sterling,
Right.
and that was when the ball really started to move on this type of stuff. But let me ask you this, Tommy. Do you think anyone who's staying at the Radisson really cares that they're a sponsor of a football team that has Adrian Peterson on it? I think most people who are staying at the Radisson are on Kayak, checking if the Sheraton or Motel 6 is $20 cheaper that night.
Hey, just give a free plug to Kayak. What are you doing?
Wait, what? Sorry, what did you say about Kayak?
You're just giving up free plugs now to companies? Is that what we do on the show now? Jeez.
How do you know I'm not getting a little cash under the table? You know,
I'm starting to think that you are. I'm starting to think that maybe you should go shove some leaves down a 4-year-old's throat and see if Kayak still wants you to mention their name. But
I'm pretty strategic in the name drop thing. Now Kayak's gonna come after us for putting affiliate in their name with Adrian Peterson. But I guess my point is, I don't think that that what he did is right by any means, but I think it's starting to get a little out of control with just everyone walking on pins and needles because of what's going on in the NFL. Like, no one's talking about the Ray Rice thing anymore. With the Vikings, no sponsors dropped the Ravens. Or sorry, with Ray Rice with the Ravens, no sponsors dropped their partnerships with the Ravens. When supposedly the Ravens do about all this stuff and handled it the wrong way for months. So that's why I'm just a little confused on how each situation is being handled. And no one's criticizing Roger Goodell for not going after Adrian Peterson and suspending him. Yet there's evidence to show what he did. So I'm just right now really confused on why every situation is being treated so differently, and not just by Roger Goodell, but by corporate sponsorships, by the court of public opinion. That's what confuses me the most right now. So I guess by my point, I'm not justifying what he did or saying that I support. Well, I'm turning off the iPod sound right now. It's messing up my monologue. But I'm not saying I support his way of punishing his child. I'm just really confused by the way that people are reacting to every situation. Do you agree? See what I'm saying, Tommy? Like, no one is even talking about Ray Rice anymore.
I'll agree that there's a lot of people who are just saying anti-Ray Rice, anti-Adrian Peterson things just to make themselves feel better about themselves. I'll agree with you on that. But little kids, man. Yeah, I mean, and here's the other part of it, too, which I think you need to take into account. Unless I'm reading this story wrong, these kids don't live with them full time, or at least they're the one that is in question. I mean, these are kids who just come and visit him every now and then because he's got like 6 of them or something like that.
Yeah, it sounds like he has a bunch of different kids, but
If it was a kid who lived with them full time and kind of knew the expectations of how to behave and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. But the fact of the matter is, the kid just came to visit him, had no idea what he was getting himself into, and all of a sudden he's got a mouthful of leaves and bruises all over the place. He has no idea what the hell happened. So,
Tommy,
it's
do you also
how much is it really his kid? I mean, it's his kid, but I mean, how much does he have the right to discipline the kid if he doesn't see him a lot? You know, I mean, is that really fair? I don't know.
Tommy, I think you're making a really good point because, you know, if you are growing up in the same household and you know the expectations, then we're not justified, but I could see how it'd be, you know, at least some type of excuse for that type of thing. But another thing that's a little suspect to me is, especially if these aren't, you know, his wife, but a baby mama, you know, the way they use that term very freely, isn't it a little suspect the timing that this is all coming out? Do you not think there might be some type of thing going on right now where these baby mamas of Adrian Peterson are kind of coming to him and saying, you know what, if you don't pay us this amount of money, we're going to release all this stuff?
Oh, I'm sure there's a little bit of that. I'm sure there is, and that's another thing that weirded me out. I mean, this is something that happened a while ago when he hit the kid or whatever it was. But at the same time,
Tommy, did you see the second story that came out last night?
Yeah, with the girl from Houston, she had a Band-Aid on her head or something like that. There was no proof of anything, but
about his head, about the slamming the kid's head into the car. So I just think that now all these stories are coming out of the woodworks, and yeah, I don't know. And then as far as like getting back to the actual question, you know, would I start him Sunday? I think another perspective people don't think about a lot is, you know, there's so much pressure on these head coaches and these general managers. And if you're an owner, I think you have to put your foot down and make the right decision. But I think the owner is the one who needs to step up. Like Ziggy Wolf, they made the Vikings GM, who looked extremely uncomfortable, have to deal with all that stuff at the press conference. Same with Mike Zimmer. When those guys have way more on the line, if you're the head coach or the GM of a football team, you have very few. This might be your only opportunity ever to fulfill a dream. And to not have your star running back for a couple of games can affect the entire season, and that could affect your career. So that's why I think it's a lot tougher on a GM or a coach to make this decision. I really think it needs to fall on the owner because they don't have, you know, although there's money involved, they don't have the pressure of winning as much as a coach or a GM does.
I'll agree with you on that. I mean, you saw the Panthers do it when they cut in and said, you know what, you're not going to play Greg Hardy. I'm sorry. But, yeah, I mean, the owner needs to put his foot down either way, and that's what needs to happen. I totally agree with you.
And in this type of situation, what hurts the owner most is someone like the Radisson revoking their sponsorship. So for the owner, it's all about money. For the coaches, GM, it's all about winning. So there's different things that drive each of them. So that's why I think that it's wrong to put the GM or a coach in a position where they have to make this type of decision because their profession, their job relies on having a star player. So it's not fair to them to make the type of decision. Everyone is saying, well, what about like your moral compass? You know, how could you ever, you know, support child abuse and not play this guy? Well, although it's really messed up, they have other, you know, a lot of people put their job and put their career before a lot of other things that people don't necessarily support, but they have priorities. And that's all I'm saying. I mean, it's ridiculous that this stuff keeps happening and the NFL's got to make a change, but I'm just trying to shed some light on the other side of things. That's my main point.
Fair enough. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. Enough of that. It's enough depressing topics.